Did he quit his day job and do his blog? I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, a huge shift where your job, among many jobs that you do, your job is to identify winning models and invest in them.
Yes.
What are the specific hallmarks? If we're talking about Silicon Valley grabbing a Hollywood business of some kind, music, film, television, whatever, what are sort of the hallmarks you think of a winning venture that's going to move into that realm?
Well, so if you look at the pure content part of the world, people are not, the financial community is not valuing content businesses very well. To date, the most successful content exit has been Huffington Post, acquired by AOL for roundly $300 million. They worked at it for about 8 years in the same vintage that they built Huffington Post. You got Facebook, Twitter, Zynga, and you can argue or not whether they're having problems as public companies. They're still multi-billion-dollar companies of high value. So what you have seen is that we're in a phase right now where there's a lot more interest in how you're going to promote content, how we're going to take social media and find more efficient ways to bring content to people and build audiences. And that's where the focus has been, more so than I'm the new model of Martha Stewart Living, or Glam Media has done a very good job of sort of re-engineering what the content world looks like, but it's still very much emergent. Now, my view is that exactly the time investors think that a category sucks and you really don't want to invest in it is exactly the right time to be investing in it, because there is an extreme inefficiency in content, and it will change and it will sort itself out.
Is that the trough of disillusionment?
That's the trough of disillusionment. Now you're in the middle of Death Valley, which is sort of where we are with content. It's a perfect example. You have this film festival going on. There's all these great films playing all through Napa. None of them will be in theaters. None of them will get audiences. The indie model of distribution is completely broken. The likelihood that any of them will recoup their costs, probably almost zero. When we produced Look, it was strictly an experiment to do an indie film at as low a cost as possible, experiment, get it theatrical, then try and see if we can turn it into some new models, discover new models of distribution. Well, we were successful in getting it into theatrical by winning one of the big film festivals. That almost never happens anymore. We were in theatrical for 4 weeks, got good international distribution, but we were able to turn it into a series on Showtime. When it came down to the negotiations with Showtime, we didn't want to do a traditional deal. We wanted to own the content. We said, we'll promote it, we'll invest the money in it, you give us carriage, we'll build audience. Strictly using Twitter, Facebook, etc., they gave us a 12 o'clock midnight site. Told us it had to be racy to get ratings. So we made it a little racier. That was really hard. Anyway, we premiered Look to a 1 share. Unheard of in cable. I mean, that's Larry King Live when he was around. At midnight on Showtime, strictly from a social media audience, not a dime spent promoting it on the network. And the first season did very well. When it came to do the second season with Showtime, there wasn't a lot of interest in pursuing that financial model. Meanwhile, Hulu started, rising in its audience, and we've continued to talk to them about doing the series with them in a different model than going through traditional cable. So there's guys like us, and there's many other people experimenting around. I think that what we'll see are the replacements for distribution emerge. Ustream, for example. Some of the stuff happening in live streaming are getting very big audiences. We put Charlie Sheen on the air when he was having his meltdown, and he had a huge real-time audience for a while he hung around to do it. However, when the idea of turning it into an online TV series came along, he's like, well, where's my $10 million check?
No, he's the old model.
And we're like, well, no, that's not how it works in our world. Well, fuck you. Well, I didn't say that.
I can't conceive of him using that language with you, Barry.
But if you look
He's
at
just a big teddy bear.
how large some of the live streaming audiences are getting, they're big. They're big. The guy who jumped out of space.
Oh yeah.
While
Red Bull did a great job.
While there's arguments about exactly how many people they had online simultaneously, ultimately it looked like primetime TV. And so more and more you're seeing audiences shift. You're certainly seeing a huge shift in how people consume content. The grid is pretty much dead in terms of I have to watch that program at
the time.
Friday
Yeah.
at 9 o'clock. You're either time shifting.
By the way, we get your Twitter handle up here. B Schuler, right?
Yeah, yes.
BSCHULER.
Yeah. So, people are consuming content in a variety of ways. They get it when they want it. And YouTube surfing has become a medium in and of itself. Ultimately, the big competition with media today is not between Hollywood and Silicon Valley. The competition is over our time, your time. How are you going to spend any particular hour consuming media? And how that shakes out over the next 5-10 years is going to be very interesting.
Okay, so you've mentioned a few organizations, Ustream for one.
Yep.
Who do you feel is well poised to take advantage of this shift? By the way, I think the question, is Silicon Valley grabbing the torch from Hollywood? But
Yes.
Your answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay. And Ustream is one of those companies
Well, I think certainly YouTube for sure. I mean, they're deploying a strategy. They're starting to fund original content. They'll learn a lot of hard lessons that way, but they view themselves as a new model of cable, over-the-top cable, as does Ustream, as does Hulu ultimately, although they're owned by the traditional guys. Ultimately, you'll see, I believe, some of the premium networks like HBO break away. Right now, if you can get HBO on demand at the HBO Go and stream to your iPad, whatever, but you have to subscribe to cable.
Right.
And the reason is that HBO gets all their revenue from cable companies. They don't even know who their customers are, and the cable companies don't want them to know. But sooner or later, people are going to say, I just want HBO Go. And they'll be forced to sort of break away and let consumers have that, or someone's going to invent an HBO that isn't HBO. And create great content and let people have. Consumers always get what they
we're
want.
starting to move into the App Store model, I think.
Well, you will start to see the traditional, remember, scarcity and distribution break down and coagulate in new forms.
Largely in volume. I think it's volume is where you get, it's a jujitsu move rather than restricted. It's like, okay, instead it's like the app space. We're used to in the old days, us old timers, you want a high-powered app, you pay $600 for it.
Yeah.
Now you get on your iPad or on your Android device, you get a very powerful app for $3.50 because of the volume.
Right. So the problem with volume is noise. And now there's just so much content created. How do you find anything? How do you find what you want? Now you're going to be talking about context in the next session, and when you look ahead to big data and social graphs, how much you're giving up, and ergo how much the big data side of the game knows about you, you can envision a world where your whatever device you're using will tell you what you want to watch.
Yeah.
It will let
Yeah.
you know what's out that's new that you are most likely to really enjoy from all the inferences you're providing in your social graph. And that becomes a big game changer. Now, look, the traditional media guys are not going to roll over and play dead. Particularly the cable guys. Now, the cable guys are high practitioners of scarcity and control of distribution.
And they've got the pipeline.
And they have the pipe. They have the last mile. And their plan to maintain scarcity is your data plan. In other words, we will make it more expensive for you to consume media over the top versus through our proprietary network, which is controlled by our grid, our electronic programming guide. That has been their plan since 2000. But there's a fly in that ointment, and the fly in that ointment is 4G. Cable doesn't necessarily, the last mile providers, which is very expensive, the people who put the wire into your house, which can either be a cable company or AT&T, Verizon. Now all of a sudden you get 4G. I mean, my 4G phone, 20 megabits. That's awesome. I mean, that's like having fiber in your house. And you all of a sudden have 4G access point in your home. You can tell the cable guys, see you later. Now, of course,
But you're still paying bandwidth
you're still
for that.
paying bandwidth for that, but with competition, without
Between
a monopoly,
between those two
with
big-
competition between the two, it ought to do what competition does, drive prices down, and allow these new models to emerge unfettered by the monopoly of
Yeah.
scarcity.
We know. Well, I have an econ degree, so you're speaking my language. Yeah, substitutes and scarcity.
Yeah.
So okay, so it sounds to me like these companies will want to merge. You'll want to see cable companies buying the mobile space. Comcast having a big mobile presence.
Yeah, well, you start getting into regulatory issues, and look, I think the pipe will sort itself out via competition.
It's taken a long time.
And you're starting to see, if you look at the numbers of the various cable companies, a lot of people are cutting the cord, consuming their content in other ways. We have a lot of work to do on our side in how to deliver really good content and figure out how to find it or how it gets to you. So it is a very exciting time because we're right smack in the white space of one chapter starting to close, whether the traditional media folks want to accept it or not, and a new chapter that you can't quite see the title to starting.
Who do you buy stock in?
Well, I couldn't tell you that. I don't even know. The companies that will win haven't gone public yet.
Yeah. Okay. It should be noted, by the way, how many of you read Isaacson's Steve Jobs book? I've loved running across the passage where Jobs was needed to figure out the internet, which I guess he did pretty much, and he called you, right?
Yeah.
That's a very. Can you tell us a little bit about that call?
Well, the call that was referred to in the book actually was around the issues that he was having getting music for iTunes.
Which is directly related to this.
And so when they launched the original iPod and wanted to deliver streaming media, they needed content, and of course that was right smack when Napster was in full play and the industry was out of their minds.
Terrified.
Out of their minds. And we had just merged AOL and Time Warner. We had a long relationship going back to many, many years. And so he called me to help him out in solving the problem, which I did. And if I wanted to talk more, I would have given the story to Walter.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to Shanghai you with that one, but it was just, it's one of the reasons I'm paying rapt attention, because apparently when people listen to your advice, it works out pretty well. Well,
Any
let's grab,
questions?
yeah, let's take a couple Q&A. Good one here. And let's just go up to this microphone.
Hi, James Taylor from Artistworks. Question about mixing both the Hollywood and your job as a VC now as well. With the provisions in the new Startup Act happening hopefully next year, where individuals can raise money for not just they can raise it for the capital structure of the film company rather than just the project. How do you see that affecting film? And are you threatened by that provision, the crowdfunding provision in the Startup Act? And then the second question I had was about your involvement in education.
Okay.
I know with Blue Oak you have a big passion for education.
Yeah.
How do you see those things with scarcity and distribution that's been going on in the film industry now happening with online education, with Coursera and what's happening there?
Oh, man,
he's
those
got
are
about an
awesome.
hour worth of answers here. All right, well let's start with the Startup Act, and for those who may not be familiar with what he was talking about, you've probably seen Kickstarter, Indiegogo. It's something called crowdsourcing, where it's a new way to fund a project. It's actually very exciting. We're investors in Kickstarter, and so if you have a project, you can go to this site and tell people I'm either making a product or I want to launch an album or a movie, and then they offer you different things from T-shirts to being named a producer, depending upon how much money you put in. And people are successfully raising money for products and for creative projects. What they added in the Jobs Act was that they can also offer equity. So if you have a film project, you could offer a percentage of the proceeds, or you could offer potentially stock in a company. For me as an investor, I don't find that threatening at all. I'm a later stage investor. I help companies get really big. It does have impact on seed capital and how that goes. But I think crowdsourcing is very exciting. I think it has danger in that people will be investing in things and losing money, and the SEC will have to keep a close eye on it. But it'll be great. All in all, great experiment, and maybe a good way to finance some projects. I hope that answers that question. On the school side, I think that we see a lot of innovation going on aimed at the classroom. I think there are going to be a lot of disappointed innovators who believe that they can make a lot of money creating apps for schools and new things. I do believe, however, at higher ed, where Coursera is, where you see the MOOCs massively open online course companies evolving, I think at the university level, we're going to see the notion of what a university is change. A big brand like Stanford could conceivably be a worldwide brand that offers degrees. You don't have to go to the campus, and we'll see lots of activity going on there. Our public school systems, when you talk about K through 12, different story. Innovation in that environment is extremely complex, difficult. It is not a market. It is not a vertical market the way Silicon Valley likes to think about it. It is very hard to sell into. So the idea of making a lot of money at it is there'll be a lot of disappointed people. I do believe that creative minds should focus their passion on innovation and education, but they should think about doing it in the not-for-profit world versus trying to profit